Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tunde. Today, we'll be talking about chess. And I know the topic is a bit, just a little out of context, because I know for a lot of us here, we are almost nerds. All of you are nerds. I'm accusing you of being nerds, but more importantly, we're here with a vision to build the future. What that looks like to us is deeply embedded in our sense of purpose. Every single person in this room has an ability to do something that matters to the world. And that journey started for me some 20 years ago. And which is why today I want to talk to us about building a future that includes all of us, so that we understand that the skills that we have, the talents that we have, the ability that we have, when we combine that with a purpose that gives other people a keen sense of belonging, we can truly, truly create a meaningful future for everyone where they can participate regardless of where they're from. So once again, it's an honor to be here, to stand on this stage and to be able to speak to every single person here. My journey started 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I was 10 years old. And I grew up in a small place in Lagos, Nigeria called Ikorodu. Now, Ikorodu is a very small slum community, a very small village where nothing happens. No internet, no clean water, education is also very undervalued. So what you have there is a lot of young people that are fully conditioned by that environment. So before they have their own agency, the poverty in which they are born into has fully conditioned them. And I think it's one of the greatest tragedies of poverty, because the West likes to define it as living below the $2 line daily. And it is true that in Nigeria, over 100 million people live in multidimensional poverty. But the way we have defined poverty for the longest time, for me, is very incorrect. I don't think poverty is necessarily living below the $2 line daily. I think it's when people are completely removed from systems, rule of law, education, financial institutions. And it's hard, really, because how do you reach people when there's no deliberate thinking about solving their problems? By solving problems for people that have privilege or that have access, we exclude millions of other people that will never get the same access. And I was one of those children that grew up in a place where there was very little access. I had managed to go to a small primary school, but I had come out of that entire educational system not even being able to speak English. And I struggled because of this. So at some point, my parents had to call me and say, you know what? No more school for you. You have to drop out and do something else to support the family. And it was a very hard decision for them, because my parents were not educated. But they tried really hard and they wanted us to be educated. So I dropped out of school for 2 years. And for 2 years, I did nothing, but I was working to support the family. And on one day, I walked into a barber shop. And I would always go to this barber shop because other children that should go to school, they would leave home pretending to go to school and come to that barber shop to play video games. At the time, I think it was PlayStation 1, because not every family, not every home could afford it. So there are game centers where people have the games, then you have to pay a stipend to play there. So the other children would pretend from home that they were leaving home, then they would go to this barbering salon to play video games. And I would always go there too and just sit down and watch these children play. And in my head, I would wish, if I had the opportunity to go to school, if my parents could pay my tuition, I wouldn't be here playing video games. I would be in class because I was a very curious child and I really, really wanted to learn. But I didn't have that opportunity. But I still kept going back there. And one of those days, I saw the barber. He brought out a small chessboard. And I had never seen a chessboard before in my life. And I was deeply curious because the pieces were carved in very funny ways. And to me, it was love at first sight. I was truly captivated by the way the pieces were. And I looked at the one that looked like the horse, and I said, "What is this? Is it a donkey?" And he laughed and said, "No, it's not a donkey." And he asked me, "What does it really look like?" I said, "Oh, it looks like a donkey." He said, "No, in chess, we call it a knight." And I said, "Oh, okay. So what does this chess, what does it do?" And this is what he said. He said, "Chess is a game that liberates the mind." And I didn't understand that then because he said it in our local language. But then I kept coming back because he told me that it was a game that would make me very intelligent. And I wanted to be intelligent because I went to a very bad primary school and I couldn't speak English amongst my peers. So that sort of derailed my self-esteem. And I wanted to be better. But I didn't even know there was better because the only thing I could see in my environment was what life had made available to me. The other children that also didn't have exposure or education. Our idea of success in that community was very limited within those confines. I didn't know there was a world out there, financial markets. But chess gave me a way to see the world beyond those confines for the first time. And I started going back to watch. And by watching, I was able to learn the rules of the game. And that was the first thing that chess did for me. It gave me an identity. And it wasn't just any identity, it was one that I chose for myself. And let me track this back to what I said earlier about a child being born in poverty and being stripped of their agency, being fully conditioned by the environment they're born into before they have their own agency. So they go on to become adults that struggle with no education or with no skill to participate in global markets. And that was me too, until chess gave me a way to set my life on a much different trajectory. And I was really good at chess. I remember the barber that taught me, I kept playing him. He would always beat me every time. But one day, after maybe 5,000 games, I won. And when I won, that changed everything for me. For a little kid from nowhere who did not know that there was a place for him in the world, I finally found that I was good at something. And it gave me a strong sense of having an intellectual identity, that I could exert my mind in a way that the other children in my community couldn't. And because I was good at chess, I was able to go back to school on a scholarship, and I represented my school at tournaments. Fortunately, even, chess was a part of the curriculum, so we learned it as a subject at that school. We wrote exams at the end of every term. And the first time I ever left my community, the first time I ever saw a high-rise building was because we went to the city for a tournament. The first time I ever saw a computer was because we went to the city, for a tournament, and I saw the other kids in other schools, they were playing on their computers. And this started to expand my world, and it expanded my understanding of the world as well. Chess really did change my life, and it affected the cycle of poverty that had kept so many people that come from where I'm from impoverished. The science of it says the impact really is in the synapses and how, a lot of thinking through complexity, the problem solving, how chess grows dendrites on both sides of the brain, that is how the science explains it, the benefits of it. But for me, beyond the cognitive benefits, like I said, it gave me an identity and it helped me understand my place in the world. And I went on to college on a scholarship. I won a couple of gold medals. I represented my school at the Naipoga and Wapoga games. I became a national master. I was ranked one of the top players in the country. And 7 years ago, I really wanted to be a grandmaster. But that didn't happen because there was no money to travel to Europe to compete. But I was a very gifted kid. So I had to give up on those dreams because in my country, you cannot make a living from playing chess professionally. So I gave up on those dreams and decided that I wanted to leave the country. I wanted to escape. And I wanted to come to Europe and I wanted to fight for my own dreams. And this was in 2015. But something happened. And this is why, like I said earlier, for every single one of us here, we all have different talents and abilities. But what gives meaning to our ability to build meaningful products, in the world is by giving it an even stronger purpose. Now, I was quite gifted at chess, and it served just my own interests. I would go for tournaments, I got my rating. I was always very conscious of these things. I had this huge ambition to be a grandmaster, to travel to Europe and do all of those things until something happened. Now, at the time, I used to be a pianist in church. And one of those days, my friends told me after church, let's go somewhere. And we went there together. And we all sat down. And I realized that they would always come to that place to smoke weed. It was a ghetto community. And they knew I didn't smoke, but they wanted me to be in on the conversation. So I sat there, and it was a very, very difficult, tough, hard place. It was a proper slum community, a very ghetto area. And I saw children come there as well. Very little children, 10 years old, 11 years old, 12. They were smoking, and they were doing hard drugs. And it took me back to the moment when I was younger and how the only thing that shielded me was because I found chess. But for those children, their fate is that they will never get to know that there's a world outside that community. They will never get to know that their dreams are not just within the confines of that place that they've always known. So they would always choose the only thing that life had made available to them, which was to be in bad company, do drugs, and eventually maybe go on to do crime. And I couldn't stop thinking about those children because, again, I used to be one of them, but chess gave me a way out. And I thought maybe the next time I come here, I could bring a few chess boards and I could start teaching them. So I told one of the leaders of the community, and he was like, sure, no problem. So the next weekend, I brought a couple of chess boards, and I put it in front of the children. And this was the first thing I told them, because they also couldn't speak English, and a lot of them couldn't go to school because their parents were very poor. And I told them that, see, in chess, after the first 4 moves that you play, the number of variations that could stem from that position is more than the number of atoms in the universe. So it's almost mathematically infinite. That is some raised to power 120 zeros. That is a lot of possibilities, limitless possibilities. And it's such an interesting irony even, because chess, the game of chess has very limited rules, and you cannot play outside those rules. For example, the bishop moves diagonally. You cannot change that. But with those very limited rules, the possibilities are endless. And I told them, but the beauty of the game is, at every single point in time, you have to make just one move, and you have such a plethora of options at your disposal. And that is one of the most important lessons of your life that you will learn today. Because the only reason why you're here, in this place, in this situation, is really by no fault of yours, but because of the decisions your parents made, or maybe the government made. All of these different factors, the lottery of birth, has defined who you get to become. And maybe your parents didn't have certain choices, and they could only pick the one that was available to them. But the lesson is you're here, and that is what matters now. And through chess, you get to make your own choices. And how do you learn to make the right choices? And how do you learn to discern which is a good move and a bad move? all of it will be learned on this chessboard. And for the first time, I saw something in the eyes of these children. And it is something I think the world continues to neglect. I saw curiosity. And that is the gift of being young, to be very, very curious. And for the people that have children at home, see, they ask you all of the ridiculous questions. And you're like, oh God, how do I answer this? They ask you all kind of strange questions. But that is the beauty of a child's mind. And even though these children that I had met, they were hung up on drugs, they had started doing hard drugs at a really young age, the one thing that stayed with them was the gift of still being childlike, of being deeply curious. And on that day, I introduced them to the basics of the game. And the next weekend, they came with their friends. Then the community started growing from 5 children to 10 to 20, and it became 50, and it became 100. And all of these children in this community where nothing happened started to learn chess. And these children couldn't speak a word of English. And they weren't in school as well. But we had created this community of learners where the children could exert themselves intellectually, where they could get to understand that their minds were indeed their greatest asset. And after a few months of training, you can imagine a child that didn't speak any English or had no formal education started using words like prophylaxis. And I told him, what does that mean? How did you know that word? I was like, Uncle, you said it once, that in this position you have to play a prophylactic move. Okay, what is a prophylactic move? Oh, it's a preventive measure that you take. It's like, oh. And you could begin to see the impact that had happened. You could begin to see that, indeed, talent is universal, but opportunity isn't. And this reflects really and truly on the story of Africa as a continent. It's one that has great potential. And even my country, where I come from, it has immense potential. The people are very gifted, but the only gap is opportunity. And in teaching these children that the world had neglected, that society had overlooked, I could see potential. But then, potential is nothing if it's not realized. So I started to think, how can we begin to translate this potential from, the children showing aptitude for chess into other things, into education, into technology, into opportunity. And I realized that this was purpose for me, and I needed to stay to fulfill it. And now, despite my plans of leaving the country, I decided to stay back. And why did I stay back? Because I had found a reason. And that reason was the talents that I had, which is being really good at chess. The moment I took that talent and it stopped serving just me and decided to share it with one child, it became a gift to that child. And there was some more meaning to it, and it became purpose. And that is the essence of the talents and the skills and the gift that we have. That true ability that we're able to create something for the world, and it becomes a gift to them. And I tell you today that is how our civilization has advanced. That men and women of great talent and skill, they did not just do it to serve themselves. They honed those talents, they nurtured those gifts, and when the time was right, they decided to share it with the world. And that was my understanding of my ability to play chess better than most people. But to not let it just serve myself, but to give it back to the children. And in doing that, it becomes a gift to them. And through that gift, they also find ability. And through that gift, they find their place in the world as well. And it's been 7 years since we started the Chess in Slums project. And we currently have centers in about 30 countries in Africa. We've been able to reach over 50,000 children. We've been able to start programs. A lot of the children have won both local, international tournaments. We have over 1,000 children on educational scholarships. We've done all kind of incredible things. In fact, we've partnered with a lot of organizations. And just recently, we partnered with Lufthansa Airlines to build the first chess innovation hub in Lagos, Nigeria. And it all started with an idea. And at the beginning of that idea, a lot was uncertain, a lot was unknown, but I had complete faith in it. And that idea has helped me to create a future that includes all of us. Now, how do we really build a future that includes everyone? Because the world is changing very rapidly. And the very fabric of our society as we know it is being completely upended. AI is changing everything. And, I saw something funny yesterday. Because before the AI wave came, everyone was super hyped about cryptocurrency, about Web3, about the metaverse. But that didn't go anywhere. So the moment that hyped, the moment the bubble burst, AI emerged. But recently, it feels like we're so back, and the bull market is back. And I saw this funny video where there were like almost 5,000 people hanging on the train, on a moving train. And someone captioned it as said, "Oh, VC's moving back to cryptocurrency because of the bull market." And it was a really funny video. But really, what are we doing? And what exactly does the future hold for every single one of us? Are we going to continue to move with the trend? Or are we going to continue to move and to build where there's profit? Is this the way to create an inclusive future for everyone? I really don't believe so. And I believe that building without purpose really wouldn't serve the world. If we continue to build with profit in mind, yes, we're going to make a lot of money, but we're only going to serve a few people. Africa is such an interesting place. And I was saying this yesterday that Africa is known for its resource. A lot of the raw materials that is needed to build all of the modern technologies that we have now, that we know today, is gotten from Africa. But the world rejects our finished product. No one buys a car from Africa. But all of the tools that are needed to build, that are gotten from Africa, to build the iPhone, everything is gotten from Africa. But the world rejects our finished product, but it desires our raw materials. And on the flip side, the world desires our educated workforce, but it rejects our uneducated workforce. In fact, it sometimes classifies them as refugees. And I think this really is the African challenge, right? That we export less raw materials and we invest more in our human capital. Because the world will come to Africa for talent. Europe is getting old. And in a few years, maybe not a few years, in a couple of decades, there will be that talent deficit. And where is it going to come from? It's going to come from places like Nigeria. Nigeria currently has over 60% of its population under the age of 17. So you can imagine what the next decade would look like for that. There will be new entry into global markets. The world needs Africa. So it is important that in all the tools we're building, that Africa is included in those conversations. And not from a place of purpose, really, but from a place of profit. Now, I wrote down a few things. I don't know if the slide could come up. I didn't want to use the slide initially because I wanted to speak from the heart. But I want to show you something very quickly. Can we please have the slide come up? Do we have it? Okay. I did send it to the email bar. Okay, anyway, I'll just do without it then, no problem. Now, I wanted to show you this, but I could just read it from my phone. Building a future that includes all of us. What a lot of people don't know is the first real advancement in artificial intelligence was built by a man called Demis Hassabis. Now, Demis Hassabis is a chess master, is a candidate chess master, and is the founder of DeepMind before it was acquired by Google. A lot of people do not know this, but Demis Hassabis was a child who benefited from a program in the UK called Chess in Schools and Community. Chess in Schools and Community is a version of the Chess in Slums project, but in the UK. So what we're doing at Chess in Slums really is we're using, chess as a tool to help give education and technological opportunities to children in some of the most impoverished places in Africa. So Demis Hassabis was a child who went through the same program where chess was used as a tool to improve academic outcomes for young children in the UK. And he went through that program. And that was what helped form his own identity as well. And Demis Hassabis recently won Nobel Prize in chemistry. And you know what he said? He said he owes a lot of his success to chess, because chess was the first thing that got him thinking about thinking. And I couldn't stop thinking about that statement, because Demis Hassabis is many things. More importantly, he's a thinker. He's a man who knows how to think critically through complexity. And he said chess helped him develop a framework for doing that. And when he built DeepMind gave us AlphaGo and AlphaZero. So even before the AI hype became mainstream, we in the chess community, were already using AI, for very advanced training. And he built AlphaZero. And now, previously, all the chess engines that have been built, they had to impute a database. But this time around, they didn't do that for AlphaZero. What they did was they let it play itself billions and trillions of times. And through the many different iterations of it, it kept getting marginally better. And they decided, okay, we had done enough training. It was time for AlphaZero to play the strongest chess engines in the world that had all the databases of every game that had ever been played in history. And AlphaZero crushed every single chess engine, every single one of them. And that was the first real success of of machine learning and what these machines could do. And I think that was one of the things that Google saw. And DeepMind was acquired. And it made Demis a very rich man. Now, I think about Demis Hassabis' journey. And he very recently even winning a Nobel Prize. And I think about what that would mean for the young people that we're working with. And I think even about the synergy between building software and the capacity chess helps young people build. So the skills are adaptable across board. And, before I came here in Lagos, I was on the Chess Innovation Hub that we had set up. And we brought in some children from a neighboring slum community. And a lot of them had never used a computer before. They had never even seen a computer before. And we had one of them wear the Meta Quest 3. And the moment he wore it, he just screamed. And it was like, wow, I feel like I'm in heaven. And I was really excited about that because it may not seem like a lot to us, that have privilege and already take these things for granted. But for the child, it was his first introduction to exploring his imagination. And I think imagination, even sometimes, is more important than knowledge. I think even technology catches up to imagination. And because children are the custodians of imagination, it is important that we invest in them. And being able to just let that boy explore his imagination using the headsets is something that we plant a seed in his mind. A seed that these things are possible. But it was his first time using a computer. And I think it's an indictment on society that in this time of such great success, of such great wealth, there are still billions of people living in extreme poverty and billions of people living without access to technology. I'm saying all of this to charge us today. I have chosen my own path. I'm not a software developer. I know very little about software or even about technology. But I've found a way to use my gift to build something truly meaningful in the world. So I want to charge all of us today that in whatever capacity that we hold, any power, any influence, any ability, that we use that to truly build a future where no one feels out of place. To build a world where everyone can belong. To build a world where even people that look like me are not denied the opportunity to be, their true selves. And I think it's one of the most beautiful things that you can ever do for every human. That you find talent or potential that is undiscovered, that is untapped, and you enable them with high conviction. And you just watch them change the trajectory of things by themselves. And a lot of the solutions have to be embedded in the technologies that we build. And the level of care and detail that we put into it mustn't just be driven by profit, but by purpose. And I'll say this finally. And I wrote this very funnily. I said chess and coding, they share a deep, almost intrinsic synergy because both require us to solve problems, to make decisions under pressure, and to see patterns where others only see chaos. Both things teach us the art of resilience, of learning from our mistakes and coming back stronger. In teaching chess to children, I've come to realize that we're not merely teaching them to play a game, we're giving them a mindset that is adaptable. And this mindset would allow them to thrive in a world of technology. Imagine a world where young people who come from communities labeled as disadvantaged are given same access to resources as their more privileged peers. Where the game of chess that they play and learn today become the coding languages that they master tomorrow. And each decision that we make shapes not only their lives, but the lives of those around them. And this isn't just a vision. It's already happening. If you walked into a building and you saw a child drowning, what would be your first reaction? It would be to immediately jump in, maybe in the pool, and try to save that child. It wouldn't matter whether that child belongs to you or not. I think this is the level of urgency that we need to have in the ideas that we have, in the companies that we're building, in the work that we do. That we give it purpose that can serve people that do not have access. This is the only way we can really share prosperity globally that no one is left behind. I've chosen my mountain once again because recently I gave the child an opportunity to use the headset, and it felt like it was in heaven. And that was a beautiful moment. But the tragedy is there's still over 50 million people in my country that are not even connected to the internet yet, that do not know the wonders of code, that do not even understand the wonders of software and how it is changing the very fabric of our society. So how do we build a prosperous world where everyone is included, where there are still 50 million people that do not have this access? And I've chosen my mountain, and I think chess provides the entry point. It's very low cost. And the mission for Chess in Slums is to ensure that we can reach 1 million children over the next decade. That we can take the seemingly simple solution, and just like Damien Asabe said, to help raise a new generation of thinkers, a new generation of young people who would not only, be able to think through complexity, but build with purpose. And I think if we can do this and reach 1 million children across Africa, then we can reach critical mass. And the beauty of it is that for every child you empower an entire community. You empower a family. Because if that child goes on to become someone like me, or even better than me, then the family will never have to live in poverty anymore. And this is the duty that we have. And this is the charge that I leave to you today. That within your communities, and your context might be very well different from mine, but within your communities, within your sphere of influence, in whatever capacity that you have, and whatever it is that you can do, that you do not just build for profit, and you do not just use your talent to serve yourself or your own interest, but that you take that gift that you have, and you wield it, and you give it purpose, and you build something truly meaningful to the world that helps other people find a place in it. And this is how we truly build a future that includes all of us. That future will not be built by computers. It won't be built by these machines or the systems. It will be built by humans. Humans that have the capacity for empathy, for kindness, and for purpose. Thank you very much.